Hi, this is Stefan, the BMW DIY guy here today. The project that we're going to be working on is the Injen intake for an F82 M4. This is in collaboration with Mike of Extreme Powerhouse, which really should be one of your best one-stop shops to go for power and performance increases in your car. Plus, candidly, Mike is a great guy to work with, very knowledgeable, and really has been a pleasure. So I highly recommend them. This project should bring a very slight power increase depending on what you read. You might get a little bit, you might not. I've seen a little bit of power increase when I've added intakes to my cars before. This will also change the sound of your car a little bit, and it also brings the opportunity that you have washable air filters, which is actually pretty nice. I usually set up about once a year, and so when I do the install, whether it's in spring or summer or whatever it happens to be, I'll just set up that time and I'll remember, oh, here we are a year later, it's spring, and I'll pull my filters out and wash them, set them out to dry, install them once they're dry, or reinstall them once they're dry. Make sure to read all the cleaning instructions before you do so. Sometimes they can be really specific on how you handle them, but all in all, it's very, very simple. This is a really straightforward project. It is a great thing to do, and especially to install into what a magnificent car like an F82 M4. Really, I am deeply impressed by the car, and these performance increases that you can make in working with someone like Mike from Extreme Powerhouse, you can make tremendous changes that are actually really, really simple, and you will notice as you drive it. So let's get out to the garage and let's get this project done. We're out in the garage now taking a look at the car. So again, this is a 2016 M4, really an amazing car. So what we're going to do to get the intakes out, we have to take several pieces out first. We're going to take both of these covers off, which are really easy. They're a 10mm socket, or if you can't turn them by hand, it's usually a 45-degree turn to the left with it to undo the little locking tabs, and then they'll come off. If they're a little tight, just gently use a 10mm socket and those will come right off. These covers will come off. Then we're going to take this carbon strut off as well. It's 13mm bolts across the top, two 13mm bolts here down at the bottom. The ones here in the bottom are short, and the ones at the ends are long. Just make sure that you put them back in the right place when you're done. There's also a 10mm bolt right here that comes out to secure it here as well. So I'm going to take those covers off. I'm going to pull this carbon strut out to show what's next, because we need to take that out so we can get to the intakes themselves. Pretty straightforward, and we'll bang through it. The covers are off and the carbon fiber strut is out. We want to take this first of the intakes out. We want to undo the MAF sensor right here. There's a little pressure clip right here that you can press on. You either press on the tab right here and come up and pull. You can also get underneath and pick right at this bottom edge right here, and it'll come up and off just like that really carefully. So make sure that you get that up and off. There's also this locking band right here. You can use a screwdriver or a very small socket and loosen this. So once that's loose, this will come off and we can lift this end of the intake out. It's just sitting on pegs and some rubber grommets. So just lift up really gently. Now the one thing to keep in mind is these little pegs are sitting on rubber grommets, and those grommets can come out. So on a previous, I've taken this intake out before. When I pulled it out, the peg at the bottom pulled the grommet, this big rubber collar grommet with it, and dropped it down into the motor. I was lucky that I found it right on top. So when you undo this, just be really careful as you get it out. So as you can see, it'll just wiggle out. It's also attached from down below, and you got to wiggle and get that collar off, and then this will come up and lift out. Gently lift. So in this case, my grommet came with the post in this, so I'll put it back into place. There's one grommet right here, there's one grommet underneath, and the grommet actually came off, and you can just slide it right back into place. Obviously the one on this side is a little bit loose and wants to come out. So we'll take the other intake out next. The one thing I wanted to add before I move over to the other side, as I said I was about to move, is we actually need to take this intake tube off as well. So you can see it's another one of these collars right here. Now you can use a 7mm driver to take this off, or again it's slotted for a flat blade screwdriver. So because it's twisted in a place where I can easily get to it, I'm just going to use the screwdriver. So I wanted to make sure to point this out before we move on to the other intake, that this needed to come off as well. So we can just kind of do everything in order, and this should come right off. So there we go. So we've got this one off, we've got the other one off, and we'll move on to the other side. So we're actually going to do, I'm going to actually do one side at a time. I was going to tear it all out, but now let's do one side at a time and put it all back in together. So the one thing that we have to do is we have to transfer the MAF sensor from the existing assembly into the new. So these are our Torx bolts. You just take them out, you back out the MAF sensor. Now the other thing that I always want to make sure to do with the MAF sensor is put it back in the same orientation. So this will be the orientation that this new pipe will be in. This is the same orientation that it's in now and goes into place. Now the other thing that I always want to stress with the MAF sensors, these are not an inexpensive part. So be gentle with it, don't drop it, don't mess it up. So I'm going to transfer it. So I've got, use the provided bolts. They're a Torx T10. And just put this into place. So the last thing you want to do is drop your MAF sensor. Even if you do drop it, you might have a problem where you might have broken it internally. So even if it doesn't look like it was broken, you might have broken it internally. So when you work with this component on both sides, be very, very careful when you do so. And hopefully my hands aren't in the way here too badly, but you can see the work that I'm doing. All I did was transfer the MAF from the existing assembly, and I'm putting it into the new one and using the new screws. Don't reuse the previous ones. There you go, and we're good to go. Okay, we'll get the next step where we put the air filter into the Injen assembly, in the main assembly, and we'll transfer it and put this into the car. So the other thing we want to do is we want to pull this grommet. This is a factory grommet off the bottom of the other air box and secure it into place. You can see the position it goes into here. And then we'll take the air filter and it goes into place and it snaps into place with a quarter turn like that. So and it's a quarter turn either direction, so I turned it a quarter turn, in this case to the right. So this is now in place. We're going to go back to the car and now install our connectors, the tubes, and get this all put into place. So there's a 3-inch collar that comes along that joins between the tube off the turbo. You want to make sure that you orient these clamps in the correct way. So you want to have one on one side and one on the other like this, and they'll be stacked on top of this here. It's an 8mm nut driver, so we'll slide these on, and I'm going to tighten them up a little bit so they don't slide down the pipe too far. We'll get these and these shouldn't be snug yet. These should be just firm enough so they don't slide down. So we'll have one on one side like that. We'll set in the other stacked right on top like this. And again, we've got a clamp on one side. We've got the clamp on the other, so we can get to both really cleanly. Okay, so that way, and again, they're just secure enough so they won't slide down. I don't want to be chasing them and going into the motor. The motor's still a little bit warm right now, so that's not something that I really particularly want to do. So now we've got our connection tube, we've got our MAF sensor mounted properly and in the correct orientation, and we just simply take this and we slide this down into this collar. Now, like I said, you want to have this on fairly loosely so you can still successfully get this to come down and fit in well, and then you'll tighten it up later. It'll come down and you'll tighten these up once all the positions are in place. All right, so let's get the box and put that into place. So we're going to install the air box now, and this is a little bit of a wiggle to get it into space. Now you may also notice as well we've pulled the decorative engine cover because we're going to need to pull this clip for the MAF sensor so it'll reach on the new tube because it's a little short. So when you set this down in here, you have the feet. You have this lower foot here, and you've got this upper foot that goes in here. So you just want to make sure that it fits down well. Also, you've got your air intake tube that's coming up from below that you can see fits here. So you're going to want to walk this connection in first. You have to look at the back of my head a little bit as you get this seated into, just like that, seated into the intake tube from down below. You set this post, and then you walk the tube into the air filter until it sits in nice and firm. So now all of that is in place, and you can make sure that your connectors, you can reach all of your connectors, and then what we'll do is we'll take this clip and we're gonna take the MAF clip, which we need to pull off of this lower assembly here, so now we can reach and connect it here. So that's still in the same orientation, we're good to go there. And we'll install the decorative cover again. This is set. So the passenger side should be done. Now what you want to do is you take your 8mm driver, tighten up all your connections. You've got the one here from the tube to your filter, and you've got the two lower ones as well. So make sure to get those, and then we'll move to the driver's side of the car. We're on the driver's side of the car now, so we need to take out the factory intake, so you need to loosen the coolant hose. You're going to want to pull the MAF sensor right here. Again, you can gently lift. There's this little locking tab. You depress on one end. You can also lift very carefully and back that out. Again, don't break that. You'll also want to loosen this clamp here. Back that out to a point where where the pipe is loose, and it is. So our MAF is off. We also have, very likely what is a vacuum tube right here. You press and twist, and it's going to give me a little bit of a challenge. Now the other thing I would recommend right at the moment is when you have an opportunity, try to do this work when the car's cold, because some of these parts are a little warm. So this little clip, there it is. So this, you want to squeeze it, and then pull it away, and it'll come off. So our MAF is off. Our what I believe is a vacuum hose is off. There's also a little press clip right here that you press that clip in, and it comes free. And our clamp is loose at this end, so it should just walk its way out. At this point, it's got posts on this side like it did on the passenger side, and this should just come up and walk away from the rest of this. Now it's a little bit hung up on this side. There we go. I just press the reservoir back a little bit and just gently walk this whole assembly out. All right, so the factory one is out. Now the other thing that we're going to end up doing as well here is we're going to take the MAF sensor out, just like we did on the other one. We're going to take this out, put it back into the new one in the same orientation, so we want to be real clear about that. So I'm going to take this out, I'll exchange it with the other, and I'll show installing the Injen parts. So we want to transfer the MAF sensor, so like before, we take our Torx bit. Now, you can potentially do this work over at your workbench, and it's probably the better idea. Now, if you notice, I've spread a towel out, and I'm putting some of my parts, I've got my screws and things, that I'm putting here on this towel, because last thing you want to do is drop them down into your motor. You know, arguably, you could be doing this over at your workbench, and you probably could be or should be. In this case, I'm just going to, since I can do this quickly, I'm just going to do it here. Just be extra careful. So again, carefully walk your MAF out. As you can see, it goes back in the same orientation in the new piece here. So I'm going to take the old one out and set it aside for the moment. Here's our new. And again, take the two flathead screws that were provided from Injen, which are a smaller Torx bit. Again, be very careful not to drop these into your motor. And secure this into place. What I usually do is, with anything where you're trying to make a seal, and there's definitely a rubber gasket seal on this, don't overly tighten one side and then do the other, because you can artificially create a gap. So do one side just snug, walk down the other one to snug, go back to the original, tighten it, and then tighten the second one, because that way you walk your seal down into place and you don't potentially create a gap. And the gap in this case will do a couple of things. I mean, it'll act like a vacuum leak. It's also, you'll be sucking in engine compartment air past your air filter. So you're going to be sucking in raw air into your motor past your air filter and defeating the whole purpose of your new intake and your air filter for that matter too. Okay, so this is in place. We're going to install this, get the air box in place, and we're almost good to go. So we have the air box for this side. Now again, we've pulled this grommet off the factory model, or the factory air box, and we've put it on the bottom here. I've got the air filter that you insert, and you turn 25 degrees either left or right, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to make sure that my clamp is in a good position to be used here shortly. So then I just walk it back down into place. So you see you've got your posts, you've got this lower section here that needs to fit into the air intake that's coming up through your grill. So just set that down into place and just walk it in until your posts are set. So you can see it actually fit right into place pretty cleanly. And it's in the upper grommet. It feels like it's in the lower grommet. So that's all good to go. I'm actually going to reorient this clamp a little bit to make it a little bit easier to get to. I've actually reversed it so I can get to it from this side. So now you've got your intake tube. This guy, again, you just want to fit into place. I'm going to fit into the air box on this side. And hopefully my clamp isn't too tight, and if it is, I'll just back it off a little bit to make sure I've got a little more room, because I think it was just a little too tight and doesn't want to let the tube in. So let me set that back in place. Yeah, it's so loose now, it barely won't stay on, which is fine. So then I'm just going to get my tube there set into the air filter and then twist and locate it down so I can get to this end as well. And then I'm just going to walk it down into place. Now, you've got this front clip here, which I'm going to snap into place now, like so, to help hold this in place. So now the lower tube is on, this tube is on, and now it's just a matter of securing everything. So we're gonna get the vacuum hose on, we're gonna get the MAF sensor on. So let's walk through that. So this front clip, there we go, is in place. We'll secure the clamp on this side. Make sure that you've got a good straight connection to this lower hose. And in this case, it is my flat bladed screwdriver instead of my driver. So I'll just tighten this down nice and secure, so that's good to go. This is my 8mm driver on this end, so I'll secure that. So we're good to go there. There we go, so we're set there, and that's in place. Our MAF sensor, and actually I'm going to do the vacuum hose first. Again, this should just click on, so just press it straight in. There you go, and a good solid click when it in. We've got our MAF sensor here that we don't have to reorient, which is nice, and that just clicks into place right there. So we're secure, vacuum hose is on, MAF sensor's on, we're secure here instead there. So now all we need to do is put the fiber strut back in and our two covers back on, and we're all done. So the carbon fiber strut's back in. I've double checked all of my connections to make sure that everything is intact and straight. The last thing you want to do is have something not be right after you're doing work. So also when I put the bolts back in, so again, you've got 13mm all the way around, you've got a 10mm here. All of these I put back in really with what can be best described as snug pressure. It was very light pressure all the way around to get them all in and then walk them all together. Again, you don't want it being offset, one side being too tight, the other side being loose. So to make sure that this is nice and secure and in place, because it's to reinforce that structure. So it's also, this tank is reconnected here with the 10mm bolt, the vacuum tube's on, our MAF sensors are on, all of our clamps are tight. And at this point, we're just going to put our two covers back up at the top, back on, and this project is done. All in all, really not hard at all and should make a really huge difference. Plus, you've got the advantages of better airflow. You also have washable filters, so once a year, maybe pick a time of the year where you always take your filters out and you wash them and you clean them. Your instructions should come with cleaning instructions. And that's actually really kind of a nice thing. All of my cars now have cleanable filters that you can take out, and it really is a pretty cool thing to do, and you don't end up just wasting money on filters year after year. And these are much better and higher performing filters than just your average cloth or paper ones. So at this point, we're all done. We're going to put the glass covers on, fire the car up, take it for a drive, and really enjoy this change. All right, thanks so much. Talk to you soon. All right, out for a successful test drive around the block with the new intakes in. I tend to notice little things, and candidly, I do notice a little bit of difference in sound right away. And I love all the advantages that intakes like this bring. Your ability to have washable air filters, you can clean them, you can reuse them, and then it really does make a little bit of difference in power, and it does make a little bit of difference in sound, which is cool. I think I can hear my turbos spinning up a little bit more than what I heard before. So as you go through this, once you fire your car back up, definitely take it for a ride. Make sure you don't have any error codes or any problems. You shouldn't, as long as you plugged your MAF sensors back in. But if those weren't plugged in or put in properly, you'll know it right away because you're going to get error codes and other sorts of issues. But the MAF codes only go in one direction, or your MAF sensors only go in one direction, or at least they should, and then you plug them in and you're good to go. So what a great project. Thank you so much for Mike Extreme Powerhouse. What a pleasure to work with, and they really should be your go-to place for performance parts for your car, and he's a great guy to top it off as well. If you like what you've seen, please click like, please click subscribe. I've got a whole series of new videos that are also still planned and will be coming out over the next weeks and months, and I welcome your feedback. I welcome any questions. I answer anything that I can, and thank you so much.